Welcome back to Girl You Haven't Heard, the podcast where we discuss any and everything from Black history to pop culture and everything in between. We are bringing back critical thinking one episode at a time with a little bit of education twisted in there. We are going to be talking about the currently mega viral discourse that is surrounding the question, is having a boyfriend embarrassing? An article by Shante Joseph, published by Vogue on October 29th, 2025, seems to think so, or at least that is what the internet is saying. People seem to have a lot of opinions on the article without fully reading it or understanding Shantae's point, or at least what I interpret to be Shantae's point. So we're going to read through the article together, but before we do that, let's answer the question, is having a boyfriend embarrassing? Why, yes. Yes, it is. But not for the reasons you might think. For me, in my mind, at least right now, it's embarrassing for one of three reasons. One is this person treats you terribly. You insist on talking about how badly they treat you, you bash them at every opportunity, and yet you refuse to leave them. And you constantly make excuses for their bad behavior. That is, in fact, embarrassing. Second reason is as soon as you get into this relationship, you lose all parts of who you are, and everything in your life becomes about your boyfriend, and you throw all of your desires to the wayside. Your whole life becomes about them, and you stop doing all of the things that you loved doing when you were single. That is, in fact, embarrassing. The third is when your partner is secretly envious of you, he hates you, and is doing everything he can to sabotage your success, and it's evident to everyone around you, but you can't see it. A lot of the times this happens because a lot of value is put in having a man, more value than your own happiness, and you are willing to overlook things that you should not be willing to overlook. Nothing, in my opinion, is embarrassing about having a loving partner who is loyal to you, encourages you to be the best version of yourself, and embraces your individuality and your autonomy. As women, at this point, we no longer need a man to operate in society. Previously, having a partner for many women was a necessity, it was not a choice. You weren't able to get a bank account, you couldn't own a home, you couldn't rent. Like, there were so many barriers that stood in your way as a woman. So for the most part, now that women are able to have a choice, it is in fact embarrassing to choose a partner who drags you down and to hold that partner to a much lower standard than others close to you. There's a conversation that comes up almost every year on the internet about birthdays and women. This conversation usually ends with some discourse and speaking about how women will cut their friends off for what men perceive to be the smallest of things. But this is because as women, we hold our friendships and each other to such a high standard, and yet many of us will let a man dog walk us for the sake of saying we have a man. Having a man is not a flex. Internalized patriarchy will run us into the ground because having a man is not the prize. Living a fulfilling and happy life with or without a partner is the prize. But also, before we get into the article, I'm just going to say that some parts of this conversation feel like some weird and twisted way to shift blame and responsibility onto women for men's bad behavior. Okay, stick with me. Like, yes, accepting bad behavior is embarrassing. Having a man who doesn't like you is embarrassing. But what is more embarrassing than any of that is being a grown man who doesn't know how to act right. You can say, yes, women should pick better, women should choose better, but how are they to do that if men won't be better? Some parts of this discourse, at least the parts that I have seen, also feel like a strange way of equating women's worth to whether or not she has a partner, but usually in the opposite way of how it's typically done, which has made a lot of women feel like we cannot win for losing. If you have a boyfriend, it's embarrassing because men are embarrassing. If you don't have a boyfriend, that is also embarrassing because what's wrong with you that a man wouldn't want you? It's easy to get a man. But at this point, one thing that is just rings true every single time for me is that internet discourse can get out of hand, and we really need to think critically about what's being said and why it's being said. Let's read through the article where I will give my feedback, and every time I'm about to give my feedback, it'll say Jayda's feedback, okay? It'll be very clear what's the article and what's my opinion. If someone so much as says my boyfriend on social media, they're muted. There's nothing I hate more than following someone for fun, only for their content to become my boyfriendified suddenly. This is probably because for so long it felt like we were living in what one of my favorite substackers called boyfriend land. A world where women's online identity centered around the life of their partners, a situation rarely seen reversed. Women were rewarded for their ability to find and keep a man with elevated social status and praise. It became even more suffocating when this could be leveraged on social media for engagement and, if you were serious enough, financial gain. Jayda's perspective, okay? My perspective on this part of the article. Hypothetically, let's say I get a partner. My page would not all of a sudden become a couples content page. I wouldn't want to talk about or blast my partner everywhere because that is not what you came to see. However, if I were a lifestyle content creator, then I can see how it would be a little bit difficult to exclude your life partner from your lifestyle content. But I can also very much understand it from the perspective of following a creator and not caring about their man, because if you cared about their man, then you would have followed that man in the first place. However, that tidbit about women being rewarded and praised in social status for their ability to find and keep a man, I can say that I have seen that in certain situations, and all it screams to me is that we have a lot of internalized patriarchy to undo, because there's no reason that a woman's individual accomplishments should be less praised than her accomplishment of finding a man and keeping a man. Back to the article. However, more recently, there's been a profound shift in the way people showcase their relationships online. Far from fully hard-launching romantic partners, straight women are opting for subtler signs: a hand on a steering wheel, clinking glasses at dinner, or the back of someone's head. On the more confusing end, you have faces blurred out of wedding pictures, or entire professionally edited videos with the fiancés conveniently cropped out of all shots. Women are obscuring their partner's face as they post, as if they want to erase the fact they exist without actually not posting them. So what gives? Are people embarrassed by their boyfriends now? Or is something more complicated going on? To me, it feels like the result of women wanting to straddle two worlds. One where they can receive the social benefits of having a partner, but also not appear so boyfriend obsessed that they come across quite culturally loser-ish. They want the prize and the celebration of a partnership, but understand the norminess of it, says Zoe Samudzi, writer and activist. In other words, in an era of widespread heterofatalism, women do not want to be seen as all about their man, but they also want the clout that comes with being partnered. Now, this is my perspective. I don't necessarily agree with the point that I think this part of the article is trying to portray, but I still think that it's a valid perspective to have nonetheless. I do not believe that women refusing to show their partners' faces on social media means that they are trying to straddle two worlds or receive extra social clout. To me, in just my personal opinion, it reads as women wanting to share their partners but still wanting to keep some sort of secrecy and individuality, especially if they are creators and they have no intention of becoming a couple's content page. They want to show that they have a partner, but they do not want to draw unnecessary attention to the partner themselves. We live in a strange internet age where, often without cause, people love to harass strangers, dox them, contact their workplaces, reach out to their families, etc. I believe people, specifically women, should have the autonomy to protect their loved ones, maintain some sort of privacy, without people viewing it as a quick clout grab. The creator who instantly comes to mind is Stephanie Sue and her husband. He is an integral part of her podcast Rotten Mango. He chimes in during episodes. Everyone knows he exists. They know she is married, but his face is not anywhere online. He prefers to remain anonymous, and Stephanie also keeps things that way. By making it known that she is married without showing her partner's face, while still including him in her content, I don't think that gives her any extra clout. She doesn't gain any sort of social capital from having a man, because having a man is not the most interesting thing about her or her content. Back to the article. But it's not all about image. When I did a call out on Instagram, plenty of women told me that they were in fact superstitious. Some feared evil eye, a belief that their happy relationships would spark a jealousy so strong in other people that it could end their relationship. Others were concerned about their relationship ending and then being stuck with the posts. I was in a relationship for 12 years and never once posted him or talked about him online. We broke up recently and I don't think I will ever post a man, says Nikki 38. Even though I am a romantic, I still feel like men will embarrass you even 12 years in, so claiming them feels lame. Jayda's perspective now. Worrying about evil eye is so real, and having to delete posts after a breakup can be hard and can definitely feel embarrassing because the relationship didn't work out. And for whatever reason, we feel a lot of internalized shame, specifically as women, when our relationships don't work out, even when we didn't do anything wrong. And I also think that that leads back to patriarchal unfair standards. But when you have those pictures online and you have some sort of public persona, you've shared these things, you now have people who don't really know you all up in your business and speculating about your breakup. For example, there's a creator that I follow. She got married last year after being with her man for a long time. She made a lot of marriage content and showed him in a lot of her content for the first time surrounding this marriage content, only for the relationship and marriage to end abruptly after he cheated on her. So yes, there is a chance that a man or any partner can embarrass you at some point, and when you put that kind of information out there, it can feel more embarrassing simply because there's more eyes on you. However, I don't think that the potential for someone to embarrass you means that it's lame to claim them. Ultimately, the price that you pay for connection and community, whether it be romantically or platonically, is the potential of being hurt and that feeling embarrassing. So, yes, you shouldn't feel shame in publicly claiming your partner who has the potential to hurt you, because at the end of the day, everybody has the potential to hurt you, but that should not stop you from getting close to people. Back to the article. But there was an overwhelming sense from single and partnered women alike that regardless of the relationship, being with a man was an almost guilty thing to do. On the Delusional Diaries podcast fronted by two New York-based influencers, Hallie and Jazz, they discussed whether having a boyfriend is quote-unquote lame now. Why does having a boyfriend feel Republican? Read a top comment. Boyfriends are out of style. They won't come back in until they start acting right. Read another with thousands of likes. In essence, having a boyfriend takes hits on a woman's aura, as one commenter claimed. Funnily enough, both of these hosts have partners, which is something I often see online. Even partnered women will lament men and heterosexuality, partly in solidarity with other women, but also because it is now fundamentally uncool to be a boyfriend girl. Now, Jayda's perspective. The last sentence of this kind of blurb sums up what I said earlier about how the boyfriend sometimes is not the embarrassing part. Revolving your life around a man and losing who you are is in fact a canon event, and yet it is still embarrassing. I fear most women have had a time that they have done this. But I also think that it is possible to heavily critique men and heterosexuality while still participating in it. Giraffe Wallow is a great example of this. Her man hate is prominent, and yet she has also been in a long-term relationship with her now fiance. I don't believe that she or other women who exist on the internet critiquing men do it just to be in solidarity with other women. They genuinely do not like most men or the systems that enable and reward their harmful behavior. I believe that it is so important to critique systems and social norms that you might also participate in. That way you can see whether your participation is genuine or if it's just what you think you should be doing, so you're doing it. I also feel like now at this point in society, it is fundamentally uncool to be a boyfriend girl because as women, this is probably the most freedom and leeway that we have ever had. We can do anything that we want. So the fact that you have the freedom to do anything you want and you still choose to be stuck up under a man and don't do anything, you ditch your friends, you ditch your family, everything for that man, that is embarrassing. Back to the article. It's not just in these women's imaginations. Audiences are icked out by seeing too much boyfriend content, myself included. It seems, as indicated by my liberal use of the mute button. When author and British Vogue contributor Stephanie Yeboah hard-launched her boyfriend on social media, she lost hundreds of followers. Even if we were still together, I wouldn't post them here. There is something cringy and embarrassing about posting your partner these days, she tells me, adding that there is a part of me that would also feel guilty for sharing my partner constantly, especially when we know the dating landscape is really bad at the moment. I wouldn't want to be boastful. Jayda's perspective here. I do not think that posting your partner, sharing your love for your partner is cringy or embarrassing. Being in love is a beautiful thing, it is a wonderful thing, and there is nothing shameful about it. I wish happy, healthy love on everyone listening because it truly is a gift. Whether that comes in the form of romantic love or friendship, community, love is beautiful. And I need us to stop acting like it's not a beautiful thing. I also feel like posting about your love, sharing the love that you have for your partner or the love that your partner has for you, I don't think that that's being boastful. However, I can understand why it would feel that way during such a chaotic time as now. Back to the article. Sophie Milner, a content creator, also experienced people unfollowing her when she shared about a romantic relationship. This summer, a boy took me to Sicily. I posted about it on my subscriber section, and people replied things like, "Please don't get a boyfriend." She admits that her content perhaps becomes less exciting when she is in a relationship. Being single gives you the ultimate freedom to say and do what you want. It is absolutely not every woman, but I do notice that we can become more beige and watered down online when in a relationship, myself included. Time for Jayda's perspective on this. To me, this sentiment also reflects what I said earlier, that when having a boyfriend becomes your whole identity, you lose yourself and you stop doing the things that you enjoy. That is the embarrassing part. Being in a relationship does not take away your autonomy to do and say as you please. You should always be your own person with your own interests and things that you like to do outside of your partner. For example, me personally, I love to travel. I travel alone more often than not because I don't have to go by anyone else's schedule. I can do as I please. I can wake up when I please. I can eat what I want. I just like it. This is something that I enjoy doing. It's something I've been doing for years, and I wouldn't stop doing it just because I got into a relationship or I got married. And I wouldn't want to be with somebody who would expect me to stop doing the things that I like doing simply because I'm in a relationship with them. Why would you want a partner who encourages you to become a more beige and watered down version of yourself? A partner is supposed to enhance your life, not restrict it. The other thing, though, that I've noticed is a lot of times when women get into relationships, there's a lot of, obviously, compromise is a normal part of relationships, but what she's speaking about here, where they become a more beige and watered down version of themselves, it's almost like they're toning down who they are to fit into the box of a perfect partner for their boyfriend without even questioning it. They're not thinking about it, they're just doing it instinctively. And not to bring it back to patriarchy, but everything is in fact about the patriarchy. Women have often been told and been taught that you have to fit in the little box of the partner, otherwise you lose the partner, and that's the ultimate goal. Again, a reminder, a partner is not the ultimate goal. Happiness is the ultimate goal. Freedom is the ultimate goal. Joy is the ultimate goal. Like, I yap a lot on the internet. I talk my shit. I pop my lips. I be doing it all. I couldn't imagine being with someone who wanted me to tone down who I am, tone down what I do, what brings me joy for their comfort. That is not a good partner. Back to the article. From my conversations, one thing is certain. The script is shifting. Being partnered doesn't affirm your womanhood anymore. It is no longer considered an achievement, and if anything, it's become more of a flex to pronounce yourself single. As straight women, we're confronting something that every other sexuality has had to contend with, a politicization of our identity. Heterosexuality has been purposely indefinable, so it is harder for those within it and outside of it to critique. However, as our traditional roles begin to crumble, maybe we're being forced to reevaluate our blind allegiance to heterosexuality. Just a little tidbit from Jayda's perspective here. Personally, I do not value a woman more or less when she is in a relationship or if she is single. I don't consider either to necessarily be an achievement. However, I can understand how in the face of a patriarchal society who tells you that your worth is wrapped up in your service to a man, why being single could be seen as an achievement and an accomplishment. I totally get that. Being single can definitely be seen as an act of resistance. However, I do not value one type of woman over the other. I consider women's ultimate happiness in all forms a success. So if you're happy in your relationship and it's a good relationship and you're happy being single, I'm all good for both. I don't think either or holds more value, but I can see how one would be an act of resistance against hundreds of years that have forced us to rely on men. Back to the final part of the article. Obviously, there is no shame in falling in love, but there's also no shame in trying and failing to find it or not trying at all. And as long as we're openly rethinking and criticizing heteronormativity, having a boyfriend will remain a somewhat fragile or even contentious concept within public life. This is also happening alongside a wave of women reclaiming and romanticizing their single life, where being single was once a cautionary tale, you'll end up a spinster with loads of cats. It is now becoming a desirable and coveted status. Another nail in the coffin of centuries-old heterosexual fairy tale that never really benefited women to begin with. All right, my perspective. Overall, I really did enjoy this article. I think that it was really well written and it was very thought-provoking and clearly encouraged a lot of discourse as we are still talking about it at this time, in this moment. But this last section, the last blurb that we just read, was, in my opinion, the main point that Shantae was trying to get across the entire article. Compulsory heterosexuality and traditional gender roles always need to be questioned, and there always needs to be a pushback on the status quo. Heteronormativity typically doesn't benefit women, and I think that's the point that she was getting across, is that having a boyfriend is embarrassing because it doesn't seem to really benefit women most of the time. Heteronormativity typically doesn't benefit women, but I will also say this endless cycle of criticizing women for men's shortcomings and shaming women for finding happiness in relationships, that also doesn't benefit women. Even the way this conversation is happening online, myself included, plays into heteronormativity. But at the end of the day, live your life in the way that best suits you and brings you ultimate happiness, whether that be single or in a relationship. Forget about the way that society tells you to operate and figure out what makes you feel the most alive. I saw a clip from Alex Cooper of Call Her Daddy, and people in her comments were saying that she completely missed the point of the article just based on this clip. I didn't listen to the full podcast episode. If that's something that you want, then we can do that.
I want to have a very honest conversation today to explore one of the biggest decisions that you will ever make in your life: who you choose as your life partner. It can impact every single aspect of your life. I promise you, you are not asking for too much. You are just with the wrong person.
However, like I said, I think the main point of the article was to question compulsive heterosexuality and also questioning the need and the desire for women to only be seen as a complete person after they've entered into a partnership, rather than seeing them as whole, complete, and fulfilled when they are single. And in this clip, she speaks about choosing the right partner, but I think what the article is saying is that choosing a partner, not choosing a partner, both completely valid. And for women, sometimes being single can hold more value. So at the end of the day, like I said, I think the main point of the article was that compulsory heteronormativity should be questioned without a doubt. And some other people responding to this that I saw, they kind of focused on the man aspect of it, picking the right man, choosing the right man, what is a good man, what isn't a good man. But I think that in this equation, I don't believe that men should be the group that you are advocating for, being like, there's good men out there, not all men are bad. But more so, I think the focus is about empowering women to do what makes them happiest and allows them to live their most fulfilled life, whether that be with or without a partner. Both are completely valid decisions and could be the right decision for you. But that is ultimately something that you should decide and you should question for yourself. You shouldn't listen to the rest of it. That tells you that you have to be in a relationship. But on Instagram, I got your feedback and I asked all of you what you thought about this conversation and whether you believed having a boyfriend is embarrassing or not. For a lot of the podcast episodes, I will be asking for your feedback and it will be included in the episode. So if you're interested in participating in that, then you should be sure to follow me on Instagram because I want to hear what you have to say. But I will be honest in saying that the majority of you stated that being with someone who doesn't like you is embarrassing. To be delusional in a relationship when it's clear someone doesn't love you, that's embarrassing. Accepting subpar treatment from a partner is embarrassing. Having a shitty boyfriend is embarrassing. But the inherent act of being in a relationship was not embarrassing for the majority of you. However, some people directly opposed this view. They said that yes, it is embarrassing because men. It's embarrassing because he's a man and I can't stand referring to him as a boy. Another person said, most recently, yes, they have no standards and no respect. They don't even wash their ass.
Cut the cameras.
That one threw me for a loop. I can't lie to you because what do you mean you are dating people who don't clean themselves properly? But also, what do you mean people are going out there and having no problem dating with a dirty ass?
Ew.
Okay. All right. Another person said, I genuinely think why this is being said is because nobody has standards. And I'm going to push back on this one a little bit. I do think that some women struggle to have standards and maintain those standards in a relationship, but we need to question why that is. It's not a coincidence that so many women are willing to accept bad behavior in relationships and so many men are not willing to accept that. It's the way that we're socialized and the way that we're conditioned. But also at the same time, you can have good standards and high standards, but if there's nobody to meet said standards, then the issue is not with your standards. The issue is with the group of people you have to pick from. And I think all the article and all that I've been trying to say throughout this whole time is you don't actually have to pick. But if you do pick, that's not embarrassing. But you don't have to pick. In fact, again, in today's society, it might be more beneficial for you and your life goals if you don't pick to have a partner, and that is completely okay. Somebody else said that the red pill a lot of them are spouting is embarrassing, and I agree. It is embarrassing, and it is also extremely harmful to the same women that they claim to be in relation with. So that part is a little bit confusing, but that's a conversation probably for another video. Others stated that it depends. If the boyfriend is shitty, then it is embarrassing. But if they're wonderful, then you absolutely should be bragging about them. Someone else said, in a sense, it is embarrassing because men are, well, men, but no, in the sense that having someone to love is a gift. Someone else said, if he's a good man, it's not embarrassing, but if a girl is with Rumpelstiltskin, then, well. Others, however, are not at all buying into the embarrassing boyfriend narrative whatsoever. One person said, hating all men and misandry is trendy right now, hence why this is even a question. This shall pass. All right. I'm gonna push back on this one as well a little bit. Personally, I don't think misandry is real. It feels like saying reverse racism is real, and I just simply don't think that's a thing. I think that women hating or critiquing men's bad behavior and the systems that enable men are a natural consequence of oppressive patriarchy. I think that when you have an oppressive system, it's very normal to have people oppose that oppressive system and do so without hesitation at this point, because as women, we now can do that. Do I think that people are hating men because it is trendy? No. Me personally, I don't think that. I think that people have very valid reasons for hating or disliking what our society enables men to get away with. Just look at the American president, for example.
Damn.
Women are hating the concept of what our society pushes and encourages men to be, such as violent, selfish, inconsiderate, hateful, and misogynistic, rather than hating each individual man themselves. And I fear this is what is being misunderstood from man haters in general, but particularly in this conversation about having embarrassing boyfriends. Another person said, as a woman with a boyfriend, I don't find it embarrassing at all. I have a best friend and an ally. This, to me, personally, as Jayda, is what having a boyfriend is supposed to be all about. It is possible to receive that same level of affirmation, care, and companionship outside of romantic relationships, though. So, again, you do not need to be in a romantic relationship to experience this. But I would love to hear what you think. Do you think having a boyfriend is embarrassing? What do you think is the point of the article? What do you think is the main message that should be getting across with all of this discourse? I have to know your thoughts, your feelings, and your opinions down in the comments below. If you are listening, then make sure to give us 5 stars. And if you are watching on YouTube, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and hit that bell notification so you are aware of every single time that I upload. If there's something else that you would like us to talk about on the podcast, you can leave it down in the comments, or you can send me a DM here on Instagram. I thank you so much for being here. Welcome back to Girl You Haven't Heard, y'all. We're back in full force, and I'll see you in the next episode.